Gavin Darklighter looked at his primary monitor, but nothing was popping up as a threat. The Rogue Squadron commanding officer glanced over his shoulder at his astromech droid. Catch, give me biologicals down to the size of Minox, and anything that appears to be moving erratically. The primary console beeped, and a small box appeared around a distant object on the X-Wing's heads-up display. Gavin selected the object as a target and glanced down at its profile and image on the secondary monitor. At a quick glance, it could have been mistaken for an asteroid and dismissed easily. But to Gavin, it looked far too symmetrical. The rear had a couple of recesses in it that could have hidden propulsion exhaust units, and a couple more up front that could house weapons. Gavin triggered a quick blast and waited for the asteroid to explode. But that didn't happen. As the quad burst neared the target, the bolts all whirled into an invisible vortex and vanished into a pinpoint of white light. The asteroid jetted forward, swinging around to bring its nose to bear on the X-Wing. Gavin started to roll port and dive, but something shook his ship. In a heartbeat, Catch started screeching, and the X-Wing's forward shields collapsed. Something dully red blossomed on the asteroid's nose, then shot toward the X-Wing. It hit hard and splattered a bit. Then what appeared to be molten rock started melting through the fighter's metal flesh. Warning sirens blared, drowning out Catch's panicky tones. Bright red damage flags began to scroll up over the primary monitor, all but one of them moving too fast for Gavin to read. The one he could see reported a premature ignition of a proton torpedo's engine, which lit up the whole port magazine and tore the X-Wing apart. Stunned, Gavin sat back in his seat as the screens went black and the simulator's cockpit hatch cracked open. He glanced at his chronometer and shook his head. Catch, what was that thing? A human orderly appeared at the edge of the cockpit. Colonel Darklighter, Admiral Kre'fey sends his compliments. Gavin blinked. His compliments? I lasted less than half a minute. Yes, Colonel, very true. The Admiral said he would meet you in your office and explain why you are to be congratulated on doing so well. Admiral Traest Kre'fey closed the door to Gavin's office, then unceremoniously plopped himself down on the couch. Gavin moved from behind his desk to one of the two chairs making up the conversation nook in his office. It killed me in 25 seconds. Do we know what it was? The Bothan admiral raked claws back through his pale mane. Leo Ganasolo recently spoke to the Senate and tried to warn them about an unknown alien force that had attacked several worlds on the rim out beyond Dantooine. She didn't get a very warm reception. She left data behind from which the simulation was created. Gavin sat back in his chair. You're telling me that thing is a starfighter being used by folks who attacked the Outer Rim? Yes. Technically, it's called a coralskipper by the species that created it. They grow them out of something called yorick coral. I've designated them skips for our purposes. And the princess brought this to the Senate's attention, and they didn't listen? Traest shook his head. Opposing forces have been gathering power to fight over the whole Jedi question. It's heated up because of the charge that a Jedi's rash action sparked the Ramamul conflict. A number of powerful senators saw the princess's story as an attempt to divert their attention. Gavin nodded. Is there any evidence that the invaders are still coming in? Actually, no. But logic suggests that the expenditure of resources needed to travel from galaxy to galaxy necessitates gaining a foothold through which those resources can be replenished. The Bothan smiled. If you spend enough credits to get somewhere, you usually plan to stay for a while. Right. Gavin rubbed a hand over his mouth. These skips, how did they take my shields down? We need more research to be certain, but it appears that they have creatures called dovin basals that are part of the fighter itself. They manipulate gravity, which is how they were able to soak off your shots and rip down your shields. We think that cycling more lower-power shots through the lasers will force the skip to expend a lot of energy creating those black hole shields. As long as it's worried about catching shots, its maneuvering ability is degraded. These strategies are hypothetical, however, and can really only be tested in combat.
I see.
Gavin pressed his hands together. I can have the squadron simming against these things, then you can point us at them in the rim, and we'll try it. I knew you'd be game for that, which I appreciate. The Bothan sighed. We have another problem, though. Because of the way Princess Leia was dismissed by the Senate, it's political suicide to act as if her report has any credence to it.
Yeah, but isn't it real suicide to assume it doesn't?
Gavin glanced down at the floor, and then back up into Traest's violet eyes. Given that your cousin, Boris Kre'fey, now leads the New Republic, this can't be easy for you. But to ignore... Traest held up a hand to forestall Gavin's comment. Colonel, I would hope you've seen enough of me through the years to know that I'm not one to follow exactly what my superiors think I should be doing. Traest opened his hands. I would like to use Rogue Squadron out on the rim. I hope, for all our sakes, we won't encounter any Yuuzhan Vong. But if we do, we'll take them apart and give the Senate evidence it will never be able to dismiss.